we move on to the next presentation by Giulia Bovini from the Bank of Italy.
Thank you for being here, and I'm very happy to present this work with two other colleagues from the Bank of Italy, Marta De Filipis and RICERCA. So our work was motivated by a set of quite well-known stylized facts on women in education and labor market that we wanted to try to make sense of together. So the first fact that everybody knows is that despite some convergence, women still earn less than men today. And the literature that has tried to trace the origin to this gap back to its originating factor has really focused on the role of gender sorting in the labor market, meaning that there is ample empirical work showing us that women are found in lower paying firms. They tend to cluster in lower paying occupation and sectors. And this is also because there is some evidence that they are less willing to commute or migrate in order to find better opportunities. However, at the same time, we are also aware that the gender gap manifests way earlier than in the labor market, and they are already visible in the education phases. And here there are two main facts about women in education. The first one is that nowadays in almost all advanced countries, women have overtaken boys academically, meaning that the majority of graduates are female, and they also graduate on average with better grades. At the same time, however, there is a striking difference in the choice of the field of study. So women choose different majors than men in universities. And why this could matter for gender gap in the labor market? The reason is that because we also know from another set of the literature that in economies like ours, which are increasingly specialized and where you need really specific skill, what you study in university really matters for your labor market prospects. And nowadays, the earning gap across majors, so for example, the earning gap between an education major and an engineer can be as large as the gap between college and high school. So basically what we try to ask and answer in this paper is to what extent the gender gap that are in the labor market, because women and men do different jobs, are actually rooted in the choices that they make a step before when they enter into university. So basically we want to understand to what extent the choices that boys and girls make in university when they choose a major will have an impact on the jobs they will end up and hence on the earning they will make. And we will not look at the entire population, but we will focus on a subset that we think is very interesting. So basically we will look at university graduate and young cohort. So those that have graduated in Italy from 2011 to 2018. And this is interesting why we focus on young people, because there still is quite a large gender gap, I will show you, even 1 year after graduation, even among the current young generation, women still earn much less than men. And the dynamic among younger people are very important for what happened to the gender gap in the overall population. And we focus on university graduates because even in Italy they are now becoming the majority of the population among young people, and because university exactly give this type of specialized skill that can really matter for the type of job you can get. On the other hand, high school track, even in Italy, are less specialized than university. So basically, I just want to spend a minute to talk about the data, because this project was made possible because there was quite a unique agreement so far between the Bank of Italy and DISTAT, where we were able to match multiple administrative registers for the entire population of Italian students. So basically we have all university graduates from an Italian university over 2011 to 2018, and for this individual we know a lot. Basically we have education registers, so we know which major they enrolled and in which university. So for example, engineering at La Sapienza. We know the performance, and we have two indicators: the grade when they graduate and the age of graduation, which we know in Italy matters because we have a lot of people that takes longer to graduate than it should. And we also know something about their parents, so the income of their parents in the year when they graduate, which we use as a proxy of socioeconomic status. Then we have access to many sources that tell us what they do in the labor market after graduation. First, tax declaration forms from the Ministry of Finance, so we know labor income split according if you based on the source, so if you are an employee or if you are a self-employed. And for employees, we know much more because we have access to the so-called matched employer-employee data that are given to ISTAT by IMSS and by Ministero del Lavoro, where we can really see the employer where they go and the job that they get, like the occupation, the sector, the location, and the type of contract. So for example, if it is part-time or full-time, or if it is permanent or temporary. So I think so far this has been the only experience in Italy where we were able to have all this data together for the entire country. So we really hope that this data set at some point will be made available also outside of this project. So basically today, for the sake of time, I will focus on outcome 5 years after graduation. However, gaps are already there in the first year after graduation. And I will focus on graduate who goes as employees in the private sector, because this is the sample for whom we have more information about what they do. So basically we ask 2 questions, and they are sequential because the idea is very simple. First you choose the major, then you graduate, you go into the labor market, and you match with a job. So the first question is how much the field of study at the university can explain gender gap on aggregate. And what we will show you is that it matters a lot, even more than we expected when we started this project. The second question is, now let's look at each field of study separately, and we want to ask to what extent holding the field of study fixed. So for example, if I compare a female engineer to a male engineer, are there differences in the type of job they will get, in the type of firm they will go, and how much this difference helps us explain the within field gender gap. And what we will show you, which for us it was perhaps a bit surprising, is that these differences matter, but much less than the overall impact of the choice of major. So your choice of major is really consequential in determining where you go in the labor market. So let me just show you step 1, so the role of education for the aggregate early career gender gaps. And probably many of you are familiar with this chart, but let me just spend a couple of seconds. Basically, these are all graduates from master courses or single cycle courses like medicine or law. And this is the share of female on aggregate and across major. So these basically show you that 60% of graduates in Italy are female. However, across major, the distribution is quite uneven. There are some fields which are almostly, I would say, female dominated, like education. 9 graduates out of 10 are female. On the other hand, if we focus on the so-called STEM fields, which we know are they usually give access to quite well-paid jobs, even in Italy, only among engineering and ICT graduates, only 27% are female. So even among young cohort of graduates, there are huge differences in the choice of girls and boys in university, and we already saw that these differences originate even back, because we saw that they already make different choices when they choose the high school, but then this perpetuates further in the education stage. So how can we summarize this difference? We can basically, what we did here to show in a simple way how these differences are, for each major we compute the average earning of the representative male graduate 5 years after graduation. And in this plot, this is a very simple correlation. On the y-axis, you have the payoff of the major. So on average, a male native that graduates from engineer 5 years after graduation, for example, will earn 30K annually. And on the x-axis, you have the share of female in that major. So this figure, the message that wants to convey is that girls systematically enroll into field which will offer their graduate a lower paying jobs 5 years into graduation. And the negative correlation is quite striking, because we know that there are few girls exactly in the blue field, those are the STEM field, which in Italy provides the higher earnings. So we can make this point in quite in a more formal way, like this is an Oaxaca decomposition. Yeah.
So this was showing not the earnings on the y-axis, but the gap, right?
So no. On the y-axis is the earnings of males.
That's only okay.
Exactly, because we want to take away discrimination. So this is basically the earning of the representative male graduate 5 years after graduating. And on the y-axis, you have the share of girl in that field, and you can see this correlation is strikingly negative. So the field which give male graduate the higher earning are those fields where girls don't go. So then we also do a statistical decomposition with the Osaka blender method. I don't want to focus on the technical detail, but basically I think this is the column I will focus. This is a decomposition of the gap in average daily wages, which by the way, 5 years after graduation is 25%, so it's quite large, considering that we are talking about people that are 30 to 35 years old today, so these are really young people. So what we see that based on this statistical decomposition is that on average, the gender differences in the field of study explain 60% of the gap alone. All the other indicators about education choices, your performance, if you go to study outside your region or not, they really doesn't matter a lot. If anything, women should earn more if we were rewarding performance because they graduate younger and with better grade. So what really put them at disadvantage is the type of major they choose. And why? This figure mirrors the one I showed before, and here, instead of having earning, we have the characteristic of job in a given field for the male graduate. And what we see is that really the field that you choose has a strong impact on the type of firm you can get. So basically, women are underrepresented in field for whom male graduates are able to go to firms that are more productive. This is value added per worker, which is the main measure to, let's say, see how a good the quality of a firm, and these are wages. So basically, women are earning less because they enroll into major that give them access to lower quality firms. So then we move to the second step, and we go and zoom in to within field gender gap. So again, I'm comparing a male engineer and a female engineer. So, and this is striking. So the result is that this is on average that the within field gender gap in earnings. And is positive, meaning that even within each field, a female engineer will earn less than a male engineer, a female nurse will earn less than a male nurse. So there is some variability across field, but there is no field where women on average earn more than men. So why is this the case? Well, what is also true is that even within field, women tend to go to lower quality firms, again, firms which are less productive and pay lower wages. In the paper, we have many more indicators of quality. An interesting one is also the distance between where you were born and the municipality of the firm, and women are also work in firms that are close to home, and they work in firms with a larger share of female. However, these differences are present, but what is quite interesting is that if you run a decomposition, again, to see how much these differences in the type of job that you get can explain why a female engineer will earn less than a male engineer than with somebody who has the same qualification, even if we really have very detailed information on occupation, sector, type of contract, location, we are not able to explain a lot. So 60% of the gap on average within field is unexplained by all the variables that we can observe in the richest set of administrative data collected so far. So in the paper we have a speculation on why is the case. Probably it's because we don't, my intuition is that in this data, this is a problem with Italian data, we don't have a good measure of our work. So there is probably a propensity to working overtime, which is not captured in administrative data and is stronger for men. And there can also be some factor that we don't observe, but people think are there. So for example, the extent of discrimination they will face in a certain job, because you may think that if you go into a male-dominated job, it will be more difficult for you. That makes this gap very difficult to understand. So even with the broadest information available, there is clearly a lot going on that we are not able to tease out. So let me just conclude. Basically, I think the main message of the paper, I will say, are three. So the first is that I think it's quite worrisome that even if we focus on young people and on the most educated young people in Italy, women earn less than men or immediately after graduation. So we always think that gender gap are start when people make a family and have a child. However, this is a problem that starts much before, because many of these people don't have children 1 year after graduation because they are 26, 27 years old, and we know that the age of the first child in Italy now is like 32, 33 years. So this is not related to like household choices. And basically the second message is that major matter because they give access to very different labor market. So if you graduate from engineering, the type of firm you can search job in will look very different from the set of firm you can look for a job if you graduate, let's say, in history. And basically, the third conclusion is that actually it's true that men and women end up in different jobs, but our point is that if we want to tackle this gap, we need to go one step back, because a big reason for why they do different jobs is because they did different choices when they were in education, when they were young, and maybe they didn't have all the information available to make the choices that will maximize their utility later on. And so basically, I think really what we really would like to stress is that choices that you make when you are young and maybe influenced by many factors really matter in the long term. Because basically you can see the effect in the labor market, and then we know that if anything, initial gap then magnifies exactly because then you have children and so forth. So thank you.